Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cedar Side's YouTube page. I am Ira Pena, one of the analysts from Cedar Side Investment Research. And today I'm here to talk about why we think the electric vehicle space, or EV space for short, is a current megatrend and will still be a current megatrend trailing forward. So let's talk about what led to the EV space's boom. And it's because of government regulatory efforts. So government across the world start to take action to realize the global goal of decarbonization. So the automotive industry is now forced to face tightened regulatory efforts such as less tax incentives and heavier penalties. So heavier penalties being car makers are now required to have a certain amount of credits each year, and these credits are only given to EV makers. So if not, they're either fined with heavy penalties or they can buy this at a discount from companies that have excess credits. So again, these are given to EV makers. So these are companies such as Tesla, where they can profit 100% margin. So this really forces these non-EV car makers to pivot their product lines, as they are forced to pay not only millions, but even billions annually. And we also have biggest kicker here, which is government across the world are starting to ban ICE vehicles. So ICE vehicles are just your gas-powered cars, essentially. And a lot of them have already promised to phase them out. And here's a short timeline of the targets. So the concentration, as you can see, is really starting 2030. But again, we are still uncertain when the EV narrative would materialize. But again, from this chart alone, you can see the concentration from 2030 to 2050, where a lot have already pledged for zero emission vehicle sales. And it's not only that, because people are starting to realize the benefits of owning an electric vehicle. They don't only get fuel savings of $1,000 annually, but it's much cheaper to maintain. So they actually get maintenance savings of $4,700 annually as well. And it also has lower depreciation rate as of current. And of course, autonomous driving technology for a lot of the cars that are EVs now. And aside from that, a lot of the charging stations are also being conveniently placed, as a lot of the regulatory efforts of the government is pouring millions into ensuring the acceleration of EV usage. Here is a short forecast of ARK Invest Management, the electric vehicle price versus ICE vehicle forecast price. So as of now, a 350-mile range EV is still more expensive than your regular gas-powered vehicle. But forecast shows that by 2023, they should be at equal price parity. And by 2025, electric vehicles should actually be much cheaper than your current gas-powered vehicle. Which is why legacy automakers are now forced to shift their product lines from gas to electric. So General Motors actually already pledged to phase out their gas and diesel-powered cars by 2035. So they're actually one of the biggest US car makers, and they have already invested $27 billion, which is greatly increased versus their prior pre-pandemic investment over the next 5 years. So again, one of the biggest car makers globally, Honda, has also pledged to increase the ratio of their electric vehicle and fuel cell vehicles to 100% by 2040. One of the US largest manufacturers as well, Ford, faces their gasoline-powered vehicles and the European division by 2030 as well. So emerging markets are also starting to play catch-up. So Thailand transforms itself as the sea hub for production of electric cars, creating a bold target of 100% electric cars driven in Thailand by 2035. And again, the automotive industry contributes 10% to Thailand's economy. And fun fact, about half of the cars in Thailand are actually the ones that are imported to countries like us, like the Philippines, as well as Indonesia and Malaysia. So it's not only Thailand, but India starts to reduce its dependency on oil and tries to decrease its air pollution, therefore birthing their voluntary vehicle scrapping policy. And aside from this, EVs in India are also now exempt from paying registration fees and other government imposed fees. So this is the current situation of the EV market. And as you can see, 2020 has been a pivotal year for electric vehicles. Global sales that they're not EVs actually dropped 16% because of the pandemic. But there was an increase in 41% in car registrations for EVs in 2020. So a total of 11.26 cars are currently on the road, 3 million of which are new sales in 2020. And as you can see, a lot of the EV sales and registrations are only concentrated in three areas, which are the US, China, and Europe. And it's for the first time ever, because of its stricter impositions, Europe took over China as the largest EV market for the first time. So as you can see, we have barely scratched the surface, and it's a massive untapped space, as EV sales are just concentrated in China, Europe, and the United States. Our team actually projected a consensus of 579 billion total addressable market by 2026, growing at a CAGR of 22.51%. And this is the current situation of the automobile industry. On the left, you can see the top 10 global manufacturers and automobile manufacturers in sales. So again, the top 10 still holds your legacy automakers, which are mostly still gas-powered cars. And on the right, you also have your US estimated market share. Again, still dominated by the OEMs that are gas-powered or gas-based. But Tesla has actually sliced 2% of the pie for the EV automobile market. But looking deeper into the EV market, despite Tesla only having 2% of the share in the overall automobile industry, it actually takes the lead in the global electric vehicle brand leaders as of first quarter of 2020. So for Tesla, you have 29%, followed by Renault, Volkswagen, Hyundai, BYD for Hong Kong, and the others. And this is the current EV breakdown. And on the left, we really wanted to emphasize both vans and trucks, as well as passenger cars, being the lowest penetration rate of EV to current gas-powered cars. So for passenger cars, only 4% are EVs on the road right now. But in actuality, passenger cars are the highest number of automobiles by segment currently. So this is really where we can monetize off of, and we can look at vans and trucks and the light, medium, heavy-duty commercial vehicles as well. So not only looking at these vehicles, but in its supply chain as well, you have the batteries. And this is what we want to focus on as well. Batteries, its raw materials, and the other charging stations. We have also included LiDAR for the autonomous driving sensors. So here we tried to focus on the batteries. But why the batteries? Because as EV sales increase, automotive battery sales also see major growth. So EV train power costs are actually most expensive because of its batteries. So if you compare gas-powered to hybrid engines to EV motors, again, EV motor takes the crown as the most expensive with $8,800 per motor. And EV batteries actually taking up 88.63% of this. So a lot of car makers are actually trying to make their batteries cheaper over time through new technologies. So you can see they try to mix it with different raw materials such as high nickel or silicone anode over the next few years. But with more demand, ARK Invest actually forecasts a drop of 28% in EV battery costs for every cumulative doubling of EV production. We can also look at the raw materials such as lithium, nickel, and cobalt. So really what's important to note here is lithium and nickel. So lithium demand is in proportion to EV sales, as you need a certain amount of lithium to actually create these batteries. And a lot of these EV batteries also account for the large portion of lithium consumption. We also see nickel demand set to increase as the demand for nickel for developed countries are much higher, as we believe that using nickel will have higher energy densities for the EV batteries. Here we have another bigger picture, which is the EV battery supply chain, where we included stickers from Korea, Taiwan, Japan, China, and as well as Hong Kong to see the overall view of the battery makers in Asia as well. So from here, you have your raw materials, your assembly line, your production line, and those who pack assembly. We also have your EV corporate life cycle. Again, a lot of the companies are still in the startup stage. Most of the LiDAR companies, fuel cell companies, and charging companies fall under this. But what we really want to focus on are companies in the young growth to the mature stable stage. So for the young growth and high growth, you have your China makers as well as your battery makers, such as NIO, Li Auto, XPeng, Livent Lithium, Tesla, and BYD. For the mature companies, you have Ganfeng Lithium, one of the biggest lithium makers here and globally. So you also have your mature stable companies like your legacy automakers, as we believe they still have skin in the game and already have the market share to penetrate the market. So here we have companies that we feel have traction in the EV space. So again, shown as their current revenue and earnings per share performance, and as well as their projected revenue and earnings per share growth trailing forward. So again, these are our favorites, and feel free to take a screenshot of these stickers and maybe take a look at these companies on your own and choose your own favorites. So that's it from me, and we hope you learned something today. And of course, stay tuned for other future videos on other industry reports and analysis.